Hello and welcome back to Blow Up the Team. Jeremy here today with Matt.
What's up?
Today we are going to be looking at the Minnesota Vikings and their NFL draft this season, 2020 NFL draft. Before we get into the video, any highlights that you see will be linked in the description down below, so go ahead and make sure to check them out. But I got a long one today. We got 15 players to go through because they didn't know what to do, so I guess they just drafted 15 guys. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Um, let's first touch on the 2019 Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as I can. 10-6. They seem like they've been kind of a very solid team for the last few years. Last season was no exception. They seemed like they were kind of always in the mix of things. They had a good team and they were always competitive. They were 16th in total yards per game, 23rd in passing, 6th in rushing, and 8th in points per game. Now, that is the 23rd in passing was almost certainly a scheme reasoning. I don't think it had anything to do with the talent. Kirk Cousins, in my opinion, is a perfectly capable quarterback, and they had two of the best wide receivers in the league with Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. So they may have only been 23rd in passing yards, and that's before trading away elite wide receiver Stephon Diggs. But they traded him in a seventh rounder to get back a first rounder, which they turned into Justin Jefferson, who we'll talk about in a second. A fifth rounder, a sixth rounder, and a fourth rounder next year. So, considering the fact that they were going to more run heavy, kind of center around Dalvin Cook, I think that it makes a lot of sense for them to make that decision and move on from Stephon Diggs. Adam Thielen is a perfectly capable wide receiver one on that roster, so I think it makes sense for them. Defense, very well-rounded defense actually. 14th in yards allowed per game, 15th in passing yards, and 13th in rushing yards. So very well-rounded, and they were especially good in the red zone with only giving up They were fifth in points allowed, so fifth least in the league. And then they also signed Michael Pierce to start at defensive tackle. He played for the Ravens last season. I think that's about as quickly as I can get through that. Let's move on to their 15 selections that they made in the 2020 NFL Draft. Now, there are quite a few of them that are going to be project pieces I'll talk about. But when you make this many selections, you can afford to select some of those project pieces a bit higher. So, first off, they went, like I said, Justin Jefferson, first rounder. He's a wide receiver out of LSU, and they're kind of looking at him, I think, to step into attempt to fill the holes that's going to be left behind by having Stephon Diggs traded away. He's a natural pass catcher with great body control, and he's got above average burst after the catch, and he has the speed to be able to threaten vertically. He has shown a bit of weakness in being able to create separation on the outside, but is instinctive enough in route running, and he has the quickness to create separation in the slot. He's currently listed as wide receiver 2 right behind Adam Thielen, which is pretty much exactly what I would have been expecting. And I think that he'll fit well with Adam Thielen, who's now going to be able to be a clear wide receiver 1. They kind of had a weird kind of balance of power happening the last couple of seasons where Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen were both performing at a high enough level where they could be considered a wide receiver 1, and they both wanted wide receiver 1 looks. Stephon Diggs, I think, even came out vocally and said that he wanted them. And I think that having Justin Jefferson will be a little bit more of a cleaner fit alongside Adam Thielen. I think Jefferson has a lot of upside. I would have liked to have seen the Eagles pick him up instead of Jalen Reagor. So I really like him. And I think that he will make a great fit for that team. Next up, another pick in the first round, late first round here. We've got Jeff Gladney, a cornerback out of TCU. He's a bit undersized, but he's got good length and speed to help make up for it. He plays well on shorter routes and man-to-man coverage, but bigger receivers can cause him a bit of struggle. He reads the QB well, and he plays the ball in zone coverage, and he's got good timing to be able to break up some passes. One of the descriptions was quoted as saying he's opportunistic, but is not a natural playmaker. But he is expected to start a corner back at day one. So they're immediately finding pieces that are going to be able to slot in and be impact players for them. Just start the season this season, which I mean you're never going to complain about that, being able to get that kind of talent that they can step in and be ready to play day one. And that was already a well-rounded and solid defense, and I think that he's going to add to that nicely. Next up, into the second round now, we've got Ezra Cleveland, offensive tackle out of Boise State. He gets set quickly, and unlike a lot of other college linemen that we've looked at, he doesn't often get caught lunging. That was something that stuck out to me as we've been kind of going through this. I've been seeing a lot of the offensive linemen at college ball kind of get noted as they get a little bit lungy. They kind of get caught off balance a little bit. They're lunging, and he's not one of those guys. He's got body control and speed to be able to mirror, especially in pass protection, which is another thing that we see a lot of college prospects struggle with. And he has the skill set to excel in schemes, in like zone schemes, similar to what I believe that Minnesota is running. So he has the ability to get up to the second level and block linebackers. So this season he is currently listed as a backup left tackle, but I think he has the potential. Like on any injury, I think he'll step out and he won't be necessarily a huge step down. And I think long term, after Riley Reif's contract expires at the end of the 2021 season, I think you could see him step in and become a full-time starter. Assuming, of course, he makes the transition well. That's always something that we have to wait and see. Are they going to be able to make the transition? Next up, we've got Cameron Dantzler out of Mississippi State, cornerback. He has shorter arms and seems to be having a little bit below average speed. He did run, and ESPN decided they don't want to show his highlights. He was marked as in the corners group running the second slowest 40 time. So that's not necessarily the speed guy that you're looking for, but he does have great instincts and he's got quick feet and he can turn well. His hands are a bit inconsistent, but he kind of breaks up a lot of passes with them, and he's able to attack in the open field well. He's currently listed as a backup cornerback to enter the season, but I think that you could definitely see him on the field in nickel or dime sets. So two of their first 4 picks here, they looked to the cornerback position, which makes sense. I think they definitely needed some depth chart fillers, if nothing else, but also some guys that could step in and make an impact for them this season. And I think that both of these two guys will be able to do that. I think that they both have enough upside where you can put them on the field this season and be reasonably confident that they're going to be able to hold up, at least against a lot of offenses. Obviously, experience wins out a lot of situations, but I think that they've both got solid potential. Both of these two cornerbacks that they selected. Next up, we got DJ Wanham from South Carolina, defensive end. He's got quick hands, and he's also got the length and agility to become an effective edge rusher. He needs to add some power to his initial punch, and he also needs to be able to create that second or counter move. But he does show flashes at being able to keep blockers off him. But he does struggle a little bit in defense against the run game, especially if he's left on an island. If they can kind of single him out and attack him with blockers, he struggles to kind of stay relevant in the play. He kind of gets a little swarmed out of the play on some occasions. As of right now, he is listed as a third-string defensive end. I would say he needs to put on some weight or find another way to add some power before he'll be able to see a lot of playing time. But I think that he definitely has potential to later on in his career be able to step up and be an impact player. Next up, we've got James Lynch, defensive tackle out of Baylor. He sets the edge well and he tracks the ball well. At times, he has shown the ability to get off blocks and make the play, especially in the run game. He also shows good power in pass rushing. He doesn't have great speed, and he has some shorter arms, but he has been able to be effective at a college level. It's going to be interesting to see if or how he's able to make the transition to the NFL. He is currently listed as a 4th-string defensive tackle. He's potential, but he's just going to need time. And I think that this is one of the picks that I looked at. I said maybe they could have found a better talent at this point in the draft than what they got out of him. However, they clearly saw something in this kid, and I don't think that there's any question what they saw. He was very productive at a college level. It's just going to be a matter of how it translates. So not a terrible pick here, but somebody that is going to be lower down in the depth charts. Next up, we've got Troy Dye, linebacker out of Oregon. He is a taller linebacker with good instincts, and he's got the speed to cover a lot of the field. He's got great range. He shows good strength and can get off blocks to make the play. He showed this despite playing with a cast for the last 8 weeks in 2019. So, He's got the toughness to go along with it, and even with that kind of quote-unquote handicap of having that cast, he's able to get off blocks and make the play. He reads the quarterback well in coverage, and he's got, he's a good pass rusher with flashes of the ability to slip blocks, and he closes well. Now, the Vikings linebacker situation is very solid, so he is currently listed as a third-string linebacker. But I think long-term, he has a large chance to be able to make an impact, whether that's on this team or on another team. I think that he's a very solid player, and, he's got the kind of intangible toughness that you can't teach, and he's got, he's shown a lot of the talent on the field. I think that whether it's here or elsewhere, he will find a home at some point in his career at an NFL level. Next up, we've got another cornerback, this one out of Temple, Harrison Hand. He plays the ball in zone coverage. He has average speed, but he can get beat over the top. He doesn't have natural ball skills necessarily, but he has good instincts to break up passes. And he fights hard in run defense, and he's shown flashes of stopping power. He is currently listed as a fourth-string cornerback. I would look at him more as a kind of a project piece or a depth chart filler. I brought up earlier how they definitely needed to find some more depth at the cornerback position, and this is the third one we've seen them pick up already. So clearly they recognize that and attack that and got a lot of young talent that they're going to be able to try to, obviously guys that are ready to start day one, and then, this obviously I've said Harrison Hand is not, but being able to have young guys like that you can build on top of, work with, and hopefully they'll be able to make that transition better than maybe what the intangibles on paper say. Sometimes they're you see a lot of guys that are surprising coming out of the draft, and with 15 picks, especially as we get into the 5th round now, it's not a bad choice to pick somebody that's going to fill a depth chart hole and give you that potential to build on going forward. Build on his talent going forward. Next up, we've got a wide receiver out of Miami. We got KJ Osborne. Now, he runs hard after the catch, and he's got flashes of good burst, but he doesn't play as fast as his 40 time. He tends to find pockets in zone coverage well, but he's not necessarily a quote-unquote natural hands catcher. He fights hard on his blocking assignments, but he's not necessarily going to be that guy for them this season. He is listed as a wide receiver 6, but I would say his natural spark is likely to help him make an impact somewhere, even if it's on special teams. I think that, they'll find. I mean, obviously, throughout the course of a game, I'm sure he'll get a few reps, but I don't think he's going to be obviously the main focal part of the offense. Maybe like Justin Jefferson is going to be able to get worked in there. But I do think that he has some longer-term upside, and I think that he could be an impactful special teams player for them. Which, as we talk about a lot, you need to be able to be impactful on all 3 facets of the game, and picking somebody up like that you think will could be helpful on multiple parts of the football game is always going to be helpful. Next up, we've got another offensive tackle, Blake Brando, out of Oregon State. He has the flexibility to play either tackle spot, and he shows upside in pass protection. Now, he hasn't necessarily shown exceptional prowess in run blocking, but I think that if he makes a move to the guard at an NFL level, I think that he could find himself a better home there. He's currently listed as a 4th-string right tackle, but I think that if he does make that move, I think that he could, kind of move up the depth charts fairly quickly, especially considering the lack of depth at a guard spot, especially on the Vikings roster. And regardless whether he stays a tackle or moves to guard, he's going to fill a depth chart hole for them. So I think that pick makes sense. They just needed kind of, with 15 picks, again, you're going to be able to pick some of these guys that are going to be more project-type pieces that just fill depth chart holes. And it looks like they got their huge impact players early, and now they're looking to fill those depth chart holes. And I like that decision by them. Next up, we've got Josh Metellus, safety out of Michigan. He's got long arms and big hands. And he's got, average speed, but he's very physical and uses his length and instincts effectively. He's got to be able to use everything that he has with that kind of lack of speed, and I think he does that pretty well. He doesn't necessarily have the speed, of course, to play center field, but he has good ball skills, and he's aggressive on run defense and tackles well. He's currently listed as a backup free safety, and any injury to Anthony Harris, and he will get an opportunity. I think that he should be fine in the right system, and I think that This is a guy that they're going to keep their eye on going forward. I think that listen, safeties that are willing to come down and make that play in run support, um, they're almost always going to find a home unless they're just a complete liability, which he is not. He's got the ball skills. He may not have the range to play center field, but you want to play two deep safeties, he could be your guy. So I think that he's going to find a. I think he'll find a home in this defense long term. They've just got to figure out how to best utilize his talents. Next up, we've got now we're moving into the seventh round. So they made 4 picks in the seventh round. I'm going to try to go through these as quickly as I can. They got Kenny Willeks or Willeks out of Michigan State, defensive end. He's got below average speed, but he's got good upper body strength. He uses his hands effectively in the pass rush and is disruptive on run defense. He can slip blocks and make plays in the backfield. And he's relentless. No matter what his assignment is, he plays hard. He's currently listed as a 4th-string defensive end, but I would say that that's a very promising report on a guy to be selected in the 7th round. And he shows a lot of promise. So it's going to, obviously, like we always talk about, depend on how they make the transition to an NFL level. But I think that, for a scouting report in the 7th round, you don't normally see, them only talking about the good parts of their game. You often see a lot of times they'll harp on a little bit on their kind of weaknesses or points that they struggle at, and you didn't really see that here. So from what I'm reading, he's got a lot of upside, especially to be drafted this late. Next up, they picked up a quarterback, this one out of Iowa, QB, not CB, for anybody that I can't hear myself talk anymore, so who knows. But he's got good arm strength and decent size at 6'4", 235. He showed a lot of improvement in his decision-making last year at Iowa. But he is a little bit streaky with his accuracy, and he needs to work on his quote-unquote touch throws. And he's not exceptionally agile or mobile. We're especially seeing a kind of revolution nowadays where, the players like Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, guys like that can kind of get out of the pocket and make plays happen with their feet are kind of taking over the league. Lamar Jackson, obviously, is a just completely different kind of animal. Pat Mahomes, all those guys get outside the pocket, make things happen. So, and for the record, I only brought up Cam Newton because there's news did just break that he signed with the Patriots, which we will talk about later in the week. I am by no means saying he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It was just the first thing that came to mind. Anyway, he's listed as a 4th-string QB, but I would say with quarterbacks, who really knows? Oftentimes the case in college is not the same in the NFL, and that goes both good and bad. There are players like Johnny Manziel who come out of college and they're kind of expected to be like the franchise player for that team, and then whether it's on the field issues, off the field issues, they kind of phase out of the league in a few years. Or you have guys like the infamous Tom Brady, who, selected 7th round and turned into, the greatest of all time. So obviously both of those guys are kind of, the exception, not rather than the rule. But, you never really know with quarterbacks how their game is going to be able to translate. Next up, we got Brian Cole II out of Mississippi State. We got another safety. He's got decent top-end speed with average man-to-man coverage ability. He's going to need help on some of those quicker slot guys. He attacks the ball in the air well, and he shows decent ball skills. And he's aggressive and closes well in run defense. Now, he is currently listed as the backup strong safety behind Pro Bowler Harrison Smith. So, barring unfortunate injury, I wouldn't expect to see him get a ton of playing time. But to this late in the draft, find a guy that is going to be your backup to one of the more important pieces of that defense. He's going to be the guy that's going to be looked at to kind of step in and make that difference for them. That's showing a fair amount of faith in this kid. So, hopefully it all works out. I think that he's definitely got the talent to be able to do it. It's just going to be a matter of how he's able to fit into that defensive scheme. That speed, the lack of speed is a little bit concerning for me, but I think that defense is so well-rounded that they can kind of hide that a little bit. And last up, they have Kyle Hinton, offensive guard out of Washburn. He is a bit undersized, and it's to be noted that he could struggle to make a jump in the conversation. Going straight from the Division II to an NFL roster is a very obviously huge jump. I mean, even just Division I college football, the NFL, is a big step up in competition level, let alone going from Division II. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's able to make that transition. But he did have a great pro day, and he shows upside for kind of the zone-heavy run system that they have. And he's currently listed as backup left guard this season. So even late in the draft, they're finding guys that are kind of going to be immediate backups to important starting positions. So I really think you can kind of see where this draft grade is headed. But as that is the last pick, I guess we'll head right into it. I think that they did, obviously with 15 picks, it's kind of hard to really miss. Honestly, if you miss on the entire draft with 15 picks, kind of one of those situations you throw enough darts at the wall, you're going to hit bullseye on one of them. But I think they had a great draft. I think that they filled depth chart holes all over the place. They got impact players for this year. They got pieces that they can kind of try to build on top of existing talent and try to find a home in their roster going forward. They got themselves a lot of they got themselves a few project pieces that they hopefully that they have the talent, at least on paper and in film, that they could turn into effective NFL players, as well as giving them those guys that they needed this year to be able to try to stay competitive. And I think that was a great draft for them. Honestly, I think you go ahead.
This is a pretty easy grade.
Well, it's just a matter of, are we going to give them a... It's definitely an A. It's just a matter of, is it...
I mean, listen, you made they went aggressive. They got 15 picks, which is just kind of nuts. Like I don't see any reason to not.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and give them a nod here at the A+. I think you make 15 selections. And
that just shows that just shows you're serious about your draft this year, and that on paper that already makes your draft better. And the fact that you got hit after hit after hit on guys who are going to be depth fillers in places that you needed depth. Like, it's not like they're just filling out. Oh yeah, here's like 6 wide receivers. Like, no, they got depth all over the place now. That's huge.
And it's young guys too who will be able to learn, and they all have upside. So I really really like their draft. I think that they've set themselves up well. They've given themselves a roster that can continue to compete this year, while giving themselves younger talent that will kind of, as some of the, I mean, they've had that kind of same core, especially on defense now for a few years. So as that kind of contracts come up, you can't afford to pay everybody. You kind of rotate in this younger talent and be able to kind of stay relevant, stay in competition around the league. So I think that is where I am going to slot them in. So, did I miss anything? I don't think I missed anything, did I?
I don't think.
Alrighty, so then let's go ahead and wrap this up. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Again, the highlight video that I was showing, anything that I didn't find on ESPN will be linked in the description down below, so go ahead and make sure to check that out. Also in the description down below, make sure to check out our Discord as well as our Instagram and Twitter. We're not necessarily active on our Instagram and Twitter, but especially come over and check out our Discord. We're interested in hearing from you guys, talking to you guys, seeing what we can do next. Make sure to come back tomorrow. Matt goes to the Twins, I guess across town there. As well as later this week, we've got the Patriots. For the Patriots draft grade, we got the Red Sox preseason grades, and then the New Orleans Saints draft. So make sure to come back and check those out.
Solid week.
Yeah, no complaints here. I'm happy that the Patriots.
No Miami Marlins. No.
Oakland
Detroit
A's.
Tigers. No Kansas City Royals.
Yeah,
no Baltimore Orioles.
So yeah, I'm happy that the Patriots pulled the trigger on signing Cam Newton. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about that on Wednesday, but I'm happy they pulled the trigger on that before we did that video, because obviously it's going to slightly change my outlook a little bit. But that's all story for another day. So again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Peace.